All right, welcome everybody to the inaugural SaaS Coach live stream. This is Tony Zayas here. I'm VP of Growth at Insivia, and I'm joined by my co-host Andy Helko.
Yeah, Andy Helko, CEO of Insivia, and man, am I excited to get this started. And we're going to have a fantastic time doing these weekly video casts and talking all about SaaS and growth and good stuff like that.
Yeah, it's awesome. So here, as we kick this initial one off, we're going to be talking about, there's a piece that Andy put together recently. It's available if you go to SaaS.coach, just SaaS.coach, go there, scroll down the page, and you'll see this resource. It's the Killer SaaS Guide, and there's 10 principles to creating a SaaS site that converts. And so over the next few weeks, we're going to dive deep into each of those principles. But today, we're going to give you more of an overview, kind of tell you where that came from. And again, if you want to get that resource, get it now and follow along with that, you certainly can. But otherwise, we're going to talk about it. What was the inspiration behind that piece? Because I know you do a lot of work with SaaS companies, software companies.
Yeah, I mean, I think the inspiration is that companies too often don't focus on one of the most important things when it comes to websites, and that's conversion.
Yeah.
You know, everybody, I think, in marketing really wants to pay attention to the awareness side of things. They want to think about what are we doing with social media? Are we doing advertising, and are we driving people there? But the thing that they forget is that if you haven't figured out conversion, then really you're missing such a huge piece. Because if we're sending 1,000 people to a page or a site, and we've only got a 2% conversion rate, we're only getting 20 people that are moving through to a trial or a demo or whatever our conversion action is. And what we want to do is really get that up to like 7%, so that we're significantly increasing the amount of people that are moving through the funnel. And if you look at stats across the software as a service industry, you'll actually see that 7% is average and achievable. If you're over 5% conversion, that's considered good. And there's some SaaS companies that are even getting up to 15% or higher on conversion. And so the thing that I tend to see is that a lot of people only have 1% conversion. And so they're so focused on how are we driving traffic, how are we getting awareness, all of these things, but they're actually not getting the value out of it. So it's wasted time and wasted dollars. And so really the focus of putting this guidebook together and talking about these concepts are that there's 10 principles that we have that we really focus on to increase conversion. And we've got a number of them where we've really outlined this is what you do. There's real examples there. It truly shows you it's not the fluff type stuff. And so we're really big on, if you follow these 10 principles, hitting that 5, hitting that 7% mark is really achievable. And so that was kind of the inspiration is let's put that out there. Let's help these SaaS companies really figure out how to move the needle there, because if they do that, then the rest of their marketing system and ecosystem is really going to work a ton better.
So all 10 of these principles are pretty darn focused on conversion.
Yeah, it's really about looking at the website and how do you, from a content perspective, a page layout perspective, all of these different pieces of a website, we're talking about what you specifically need to change to increase conversion.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what would you say, Andy, is the most common mistake of the 10? What's the principle that you're seeing being missed the most, if you could?
Man, that's a hard one, because I actually, and this isn't, it's not really being flippant, but I do think that a lot of them are missed.
Yeah.
One for me is definitely content hierarchy. And so what we look at, and this is actually, I think, the first principle that we'll be talking about next week, but when people go to sites, our attention spans are so low. And if you look at statistics, people are only reading so much of a paragraph, and they're only reading in specific patterns. They even call it the F pattern, where they're reading a big headline, they're reading a subline, and then they're scanning down. And what you see on sites is that people love putting these big paragraphs, and these big paragraphs, what they do is, one, they intimidate. As soon as you imagine, you go to a site, you see these 3 chunky paragraphs, and it's like, you kind of have this internal, I don't want to do that and read that. And so you end up just scrolling to look at the pictures and trying to get a sense from those things. And then most people just read the headlines of a page. And so really the whole principle is about how to lay out your content in a way that's very scannable, extremely consumable so that people can get the information. It helps you prioritize the information so that even if they don't read, they're getting the main points first and all of these other factors. And so, that alone can significantly increase the amount of time that people spend on a site, how much they comprehend, and if they're really understanding these points and scanning, it can lead them into those conversion actions and just get so much more results out of every single page of your site.
Yeah, so that's, a very kind of simple and basic, but just layout.
It's so simple and basic, and I just don't think that most people know these pieces. We're deep in this industry, so we know the stats of how many words people read. We know the information about how they read in an F pattern and all these other pieces. And your normal SaaS founder or even your typical marketing manager or CMO at a company, they don't have that knowledge.
Sure.
And so they're working off of instinct. And the problem is that the instinct of most people is to explain everything. Yeah. I know everything about my software. I love it. I've got all of this information and knowledge that I want to give. So I'm just going to throw up on you with as much as I can. And that's not truly the tactic that ends up getting great results.
Sure. So along with that, do you dive into in the piece on anything on tours, product tours, screenshots, things like that?
Yeah, so screenshots and product tours are so important for software businesses. And, I think that most companies have learned that, but sometimes founders overlook it, or if you're in the early stages, you're a little bit nervous about the user experience of your software, and so you don't put that stuff out there. But man, screenshots, the statistics on how much they engage people for software sites is because that's what they want to see. And they get a sense of, okay, does this product do what I need? Will it be easy to use just from the screenshots? And then a product tour, really all that is typically taking the screenshots and putting them in a structured approach where it's either you're browsing through or you're scrolling through a page and you're going through a tour. But I can't explain how important it is to have great screenshots laid out in the right order and really presented well to get conversion. And if you don't do that, that is a huge barrier that you're literally, that we talk about that 5, 7, 15% conversion rate, lacking good screenshots or lacking screenshots at all. I know you're already at the bottom because of that.
Gotcha. And that makes a ton of sense, right? For just me personally as a user, when I go look at something, I want to visually see it and understand kind of what I'm getting. So that's huge.
It's just like any other product. If I went to Amazon and looked up shoes, and it just had a description of it, or maybe an illustration, I'm going to be a lot less likely to buy. And I think even online platforms are dealing with that, and that's why they have ways that you can order things and send them back, because not only do they want to see them online, but you want to touch them. And so when we're dealing with a software product, how do you be able to see and touch it? And really at the end of the day, that's our product tour, is see it, and our touch it is our demo and trial. And so we really want to have those. Otherwise, just like a product, I'm not going to buy it if I can't see it and I can't touch it.
Makes a lot of sense. Really good. Another topic that is in the guide that we're going to talk deeper about. Again, we're going to go deeper into screenshots
and all these things
in each of the weeks. So today, a little bit of an overview. The one that I wanted to bring up was pricing pages, because I know that's always I always see it laid out in so many different ways, and some are really grab me, and it makes it just like such an obvious choice, right?
Yeah.
And others can be a little convoluted and confusing. What are recommendations there? What are you seeing?
Yeah, and we'll dive into this in a lot of detail. And I think the key will be when we talk about it is there's certain types of information that you want on there, and you want to present it at the right time. When you're talking about increasing conversion on a website, it really is kind of a very simple thing of present the right information at the right time to get someone to move forward again. And so really with a pricing page, our move forward is for someone to buy or start a trial. And so we have to present the right information at the right time. And so we'll really talk about what do you need on a pricing page and how do you structure that to get the most results. But I'll go on a little bit of a tangent in talking about pricing. I think, we've done consulting with a number of companies and help them look at the pricing structure because, it's one thing to get your price right. What is the market willing to pay for the value that you're delivering in your software? But the other is just how you structure it. Are you going to do different levels? Versus the trend now is partially to do one simple price, and based off of one factor, like it's $10 per user. You're seeing that. You've got more complex ones like a HubSpot where they're really doing calculations and you have to put in specific numbers and you're choosing multiple packages. And then, what is the factor that you're basing it off of? Number of users, number of contacts, amount of gigs that are in there. I think one of the things that companies need to do is really think about, what does their target audience, how do they want that price structured? What are they willing to pay for it? How are they going to see it now and in the future that it scales with their organization? Because all of those things are going to subconsciously go into them making a decision to move forward. If I see, if I have a 70-person organization and I see $10 a user, for a small organization, that may not seem like a lot. But if I know that I'm going to have to go to $700 a month, but the value for me in the organization is not there, that's going to be a challenge. So is there another way that I really need to think about my pricing structures to really capture all of the audiences I want? And then especially if I've got a priority audience, how do I make sure the pricing model really fits that priority audience that I want? And so that's actually not in our guidebook is talking about pricing, but I really wanted to go that direction because I do think it's a huge piece of the process that does impact conversion.
Absolutely. A big one that I think applies to all kinds of sites online where you're trying to engage people and get conversions, improve your conversions with is forms. So I know that we touch on that in the guide.
Yeah, forms for everybody. And whenever we're dealing with any website, it's so funny that our natural inclination is we just want to get that one more piece of information. Man, I want to get that company name. I want to get that phone number. But, part of the process is really determining what are the one or two or three pieces of information that I really need at this stage because I just want to get someone to move forward. I would much rather have 5 more people start my trial or download my white paper or whatever my conversion is. I'd rather have 3 or 4 more people a month do that than to add one more field to my form like company name. Because I can get your company name off of your email address in a lot of cases. And if you're putting in a fake email address, you're not going to put in your real company anyways. So I really, you got to think.
CRMs will even pull that out, right? So
right.
It's like, don't worry about that.
Don't worry about that. And, and all these options. Like I think we just went through a process with a client where, to start up with the trial, it's like 4 fields and then you have to go and select like 2 things from a drop down just because they wanted to gather information, which I understand. But you can even think about the process that, okay, let's make our trial name and email address and password. And then when they get into the app, one of the first things it does is it gamifies you. It says, your profile is only 5% complete. Add your company and add this to further that along.
Yeah.
And so we really, even this stuff that increases conversions and things like forms ties into even the mindset of how does it connect to our app. and what's the user experience through that.
That's great. You touched on something there that caught my ear, gamification, right? Gamifying things. I think that's really powerful. Like human beings, there's a reason that kids play, and that's how they learn.
Yeah.
And I think that principle, even though it seems to have grown over the years, it's so important. It's a great way to get people engaged. So
right.
I know we touched on that. So
yeah, I mean, gamification, I love the concept across so many different industries, but it really is just an incentive. It's, saying that there's something that I can accomplish, something that I open up. I mean, we see that with all these reward badges and stuff like that. And I think there's opportunities in our marketing, our website, the way that we position our demos and trials, that we can add some of those gamification concepts that can get people moving further in the process. And it's fun for users too. Is that, in some ways, you look at LinkedIn, you sign up for LinkedIn, and it's like, oh, you're only, 10% of the way through. Add this one piece of information or do this one thing, and when you hit the end, it's like, oh, you're in the top 90th percentile.
People feel good about that.
Yeah. And the other piece, and this kind of goes off of gamification, but in behavioral psychology, they've looked at, the one thing that drives people the most is comparison to other people. And there was this big study around taxes where they sent out letters threatening people to have higher fees, sent out letters that were, offering discounts, but then they sent out ones that said, 8 out of 10 of your neighbors have already paid their taxes. And ironically, that was the message that got more people to take action, is because we compare ourselves. And gamification even kind of ties into that, because, it's, can you get to this point, and even presenting in the gamification, where are other people and how can I match, what people that are like me are doing.
That psychology piece is such a big part to me of marketing. It's easy to just forget to incorporate that, especially you're running, you're starting up a SaaS business and you're kind of wearing a bunch of hats. It's hard to forget to, put some of those things in there that are a little more advanced, and some people even know, those things, but to think to embed that into your process, onto your website, it can.
Well, behavioral psychology is part of all of it. I mean, it really is. When we look at what we're talking about, behavioral psychology is about that F pattern, how people read. It's about the images that you're seeing and how they impact you, where your eyes go on a page. And it's, people don't connect our experiences on our computers and online to how we behave as humans in general. And if you really dive into like human psychology and behavioral psychology, and you compare it and connect it to, things that we're trying to get people to do online, I mean, they're so integrated. But you're right, people don't think about that stuff. Unless you're Facebook and you're, potentially.
I was just going to say Facebook, because I always thought, like you just said, looking at real life and then how we do things online and how we typically do them so differently. And I always thought the reason that Facebook was so much more successful than all other social networks out there is because Facebook came closest to being, it's not, but similar to the way we interact in real life. More casual. Hey, how's it going, Andy? Right? You want to incorporate friends. It feels good when people compliment you and whatnot. It had events. It had groups. Like, it incorporated a lot of what I think social interaction is out in the real world. Whereas if you look at, LinkedIn, everyone feels like they need to be buttoned up. And, could I say that? Should I not say that?
It's funny that you say that. I just had a story on LinkedIn where I posted, I took my daughters on a trip, on a client meeting, and posted a picture of them because it is part of my work. It is part of my life. I believe that that's a big piece. And, we buy from each other based on personality and life. I mean, it is about human connection. And it's funny, I had a lot of these great comments of, that's great that you get to have that work-life balance and spend time with your family, yet still do your job, and, a great father. And then one person's comment was, this isn't Facebook, don't put that up here. And it's sad, because I do think, that's somewhat true. We don't want to go over the line. There's certain things that don't, because it is more professional, but that doesn't mean we aren't human and we don't have lives, and that even as business professionals that there isn't some level of that integrates and connects.
Yeah.
Because we are people at the end of the day.
Yeah, and so I guess that's kind of the LinkedIn troll there, right? The ones that can't stand,
I know.
anything that's not sterile.
Well, no, it's funny. I feel bad for them, because I think, what's your approach in business? Not to build any relationships, to have no personal life connected to it. And so if you're out in the world and it's always buttoned up, I just don't think we're in that world anymore where, people are only professional, that we have lives, we're connecting, we want to work with people that we have good relationships with. And so, I think that's tough.
Well, and if you think back, it's kind of over time, there used to be a time where you went to work and then you went home and you turned it all off. And, we were made this promise, my phone's right there, I was going to lift it up. But the smartphone, the promise behind that was, be able to have all this free time and simplify. And all it's done is 24/7. So that integration of, work and life, it's all become kind of one of the same.
I definitely think so.
Yeah, no,
which even ties into this topic a little bit. I think the other thing, and it's not actually in the guidebook, but something that ties into conversion is creating personality on a SaaS website.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me. There's a lot of founders out there that are the technical folks, which I totally get. And sometimes they can overlook the relationship. And so what you'll see with really great SaaS brands these days is that they've got great banners that have their team working together, and they talk about their culture. And a lot of times, I think from the outside, you might think, oh, that's just for careers and trying to hire people. But it's not. I think that as consumers, when we see that and we feel good about the company and feel like they're legitimate, that it gives us confidence. It gives us confidence in wanting to buy from them, in that they've got a team that cares behind the product, and so I think that a lot of times software businesses forget to include that human element, and whether it's presenting clients and customers and real stories with emotion, or it's your team and explaining your culture and your people and your passion and your mindset, man, does that increase conversion. It makes such a difference.
And having things that increase just brand affinity and people want to pay attention to, and it's a human thing. You should go back and look to see, maybe that guy's a SaaS founder. Technical, one that commented on it. And there's so many brands out there that do a great job of that, having that personality. And to me, that's like it's an intangible that if you stacked up, you put them up with their competitors, all things being equal, I'm always going to go with that brand that I just like, that's fun, that just has things about it that resonate, the people or, whatever, their message, really powerful.
And it's so easy to skip over. I know we're building the site and we're building marketing programs, and we're thinking so tactically. We're thinking about, here's the features that we have. We've got these great features, and we want to make sure we share that this feature exists so that if Joe wants it, they can have it. But what we're really trying to do is solve problems for Joe. And so it's an emotional connection of, how am I improving your life? How does that feature solve a problem? But then also, how does the team behind it understand my challenges so they can solve it correctly? And then how will they continue to understand my pains to make it better over time? And so, again, I think it's natural, especially in the SaaS and software space, for us to really think this tactical, like, here's our features and Joe wants features. But that's really not what it's about. It's really about pains.
I think that talks to something that we talk about all the time, just based on how we work with our clients. But, the tactical stuff, a lot of times people say, well, we need a site, and they'll have these pieces they want to put together. But being able to step back, and in order to incorporate, the 10 principles, you really have to take a bigger picture look. And that's more of a strategic approach. And that's kind of how we approach each and every one of our opportunities.
Yeah, I think, again, strategy is overlooked. It's so easy. We just want to act and do. And trust me, I understand that. I mean, you can't hesitate and think so much that you don't act.
Yep.
But at the same time, if you're just doing things and there's no thought behind it, one of our core values is think smart.
Yeah.
Always have purpose behind what you do. And so, I think there has to be this great balance between being strategic and really thinking about what you do and making sure that you understand your target audience and what's driving and all these things that are so important, but then also acting, but doing it in an agile way. We're big about agile, is where it's, be smart about what you do, push something out, pull some data in and test it, and then make another change. And so for us, it's really, I think that that's where you get that balance. Is strategic and then agile execution just makes such a huge difference.
To your point, you don't want to think too much that you kind of have paralysis by analysis. But at the same time, you got to put a little bit of thought, you got to go. And then that's why the tracking and the data that we we love so much and we talk about all the time, to be able to adjust as you go and be agile and work through it and continuously improve and get better and better.
Yeah, that's exactly
what
it's
about.
Love
the approach. And just for everybody tuned in, if you've stuck with us this far, I just want to encourage you, I probably should have said this up front, but please feel free to comment. We're broadcasting to a few different locations. Leave us comments. We will definitely get back to you. The other thing is if you give us a good question, that can be something we can address next time on this. So feel free to give us your thoughts, feedback.
I'll encourage that too. I love interactivity. I love answering questions. We do our monthly seminars and other events and things. It's funny. I enjoy presenting the information, but part of my process is answering questions. Yeah. Because you can really help people out and provide clarity. And so I hope as we do these weekly live streams that we're going to have some great interactivity with the audience as well.
Absolutely.
Again, like you said, this is the inaugural one, so a lot of fun stuff, and we're going to be building a fantastic audience that's going to learn a ton of information.
Yeah, super exciting. So again, today is just kind of the overview. You have anything else to add for today? I think we hit some good points.
Yeah, I think we hit some amazing points. And again, I think that last thing that we talked about is so powerful, is that, strategy. Yep. You have to think about what you're doing. And when you look at something like our 10 principles, that helps you frame some strategies for increasing conversion. And then that agile execution, it doesn't have to be all built. People in software know that. You build and you release, you build, you release. Yeah. And then the just final piece is that data. I think the other thing that a lot of companies forget is to install the right metrics. If you're in software, a lot of times you can use tools like Firebase to really get even in-app or in-software analytics that can tie back to your marketing. And so I think that last point was great, is there's a strategy, agile execution, and then data and optimization. And really what we're talking about in all of our series as we do this over time is going to be really about that. And today, and what we're doing with the 10 principles is really that center point, is what's some of the strategy and execution tasks specifically around increasing conversion for websites. But the only other thing that I'd add is please download that white paper. I actually think there is, just a ton of value in there, and something that, you literally can grab some great pieces of information and make changes like today that will literally make some changes. It's unbelievable. And so, that's just, it's something that we follow internally, and we're putting it out there. And I think that's part of all of this of, we like educating, we like, being, leading the thought around these things. And so we're excited to continue this.
Awesome. So go get your copy. It is at SaaS.coach. That's it. Hit that.
Killer website, guidebook.
Yep. And it's there for you to download. Really good stuff. And again, we're going to be diving deeper into each of those principles. We would love to get your comments, questions, and feedback. Just tell us right below the video, and we will get back to you. For some of them, we'll probably turn that into a piece that we address here as we do these sessions.
Yeah, and hopefully as we dive in deep with some of those specific topics, we'll have some of those questions so we can even talk about very specific scenarios. So that'd be great.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, well, very good. Well, thanks everyone for joining in today.
Thank you.
This was the inaugural. Join us next week as we dive deeper into that first principle. And thanks again. Feel free to comment, leave us a question, and go get that guidebook.
All right,
We'll
guys.
see you next time.
See ya.